everybody. How are you? I'm Jeffrey the librarian. Today we're going to talk about a really interesting topic. We're talking about Native America, the Americas before Columbus came, before European settlement. Fascinating topic, and it just gets more and more interesting with each year. We're learning more, and we're really just coming to terms with how the civilization that was here. There's so many unanswered questions. We're really in the infancy of understanding how profound the civilization was, and really that civilization that was in the Americas before Columbus has come to impact civilization the world over today. So we're going to get into some of those topics. It's a big topic, so I'm going to list some of the books that we're going to be referencing right here. The first one to start with, if you're new to this topic, is Charles Mann, 1491. Obviously called 1491 because it's about right before Columbus. Another good one, if you're interested in a really sort of radical understanding of civilization in North America before Columbus, Stephen Lekson, who's an archaeologist, has a history of the ancient Southwest. If you really want to, if you're a data person and you like science, you really want to get into the numbers and the science, I would recommend the Moundbuilders, Ancient Peoples of Eastern North America by George Milner. But those are some 3 books to get you started with. Again, if you have a general interest, if you're new to the topic, I recommend starting with 1491 by Charles Mann. It's almost hard to know where to start with this topic, but if you sort of go back in time before Columbus to the Americas, we used to justify essentially the colonization of the Americas by saying that, well, there weren't a lot of people in the Americas to begin with, so it was okay that Europeans came and conquered the continent. Well, now we know that's just not true. There were millions and millions of people living in the Americas in 1491. When Columbus landed in Hispaniola, there were tens of millions of people in North America, tens of millions of people in Central America, tens of millions of people in South America. There were all kinds of civilizations. There was the Inca, the Aztec, the Mayans, the people in the American Southwest, the Pueblo people. There was Cahokia civilization, the Mississippian civilization. There were the Iroquois and the Huron in the Northeast. There were the Sioux people in the North Central. There were really these massive groups of people all over the Americas. So another thing right off the bat that's a big misunderstanding is when the first Europeans start coming over in the 1600s to North America. They'd been in the Spanish and the Portuguese had been further south in Mexico and South America before then. However, in North America, when the British and the French start coming over in the early 1600s, although the Spanish did have an important Florida holdings in the 1500s, but in the 1600s, when Jamestown and Quebec begin, the British and the French come, the first generation of Europeans to come to North America did not see the Native Americans as technologically inferior. I think that's an important thing, and a lot of Americans today, and probably a lot of people in the world today, don't know that. But Charles Mann goes into a lot of detail about how the first Europeans, when they first came here, they noted how the native homes were warmer in the winter than their English homes. things like moccasins. They were better shoes. Moccasins were better shoes than these clunky things the Europeans were wearing. So there wasn't this sort of immediate technological superiority that a lot of people assume. Another big one is when the Europeans first came here, they had no idea what they were doing. They were in a totally new continent. Different landscape, different ecosystem. They had no concept of how to farm here, what plants we can eat, what fruits from the trees are good, what nuts to eat. The Native Americans had all this information. They've been doing this for thousands of years. And if it hadn't been for the Native Americans helping, so this is the sad irony, is the English colonies in both Virginia and Massachusetts in the 1600s, the first ones, they would have failed if it hadn't been for the local Native Americans that helped them. They showed them how to farm. There were, believe it or not, there was a giant pyramid in the middle of North America, where St. Louis is today. So lots of Americans don't know this, but yes, about 1,000 years ago, and that's an important kind of time frame to remember. About 1,000 years ago in North America was a really productive time culturally, socially. There was a lot going on. There's Cahokia Mound, Monk's Mound, which Cahokia was essentially a giant city that at the time, 1,000 years ago, would have been bigger than London in Europe, and had tens of thousands of people, had surrounding monumental architecture. This was the Mississippian Culture. The Mississippian Culture, as the name implies, went up and down the Mississippi River and had large sway over central North America for a long time. And to the southwest, you had the Pueblo people. There's Chaco Mounds in New Mexico. And Chaco Canyon was one of the greatest works of architecture on the planet at the time. Multi-storied architecture. And if you ever visit some of the Park Service sites in the southwest, New Mexico, Utah, Colorado, there's the Pueblo Indian people that had the famous cliff dwelling sites. And this culture is really important. What they did was quite amazing. They took maize agriculture that began in Mexico. So maize, corn, came from a grass called teosinte. They're pretty sure. They're not 100% sure, but there's a grass called teosinte. It's a tropical grass. The ancient people in Central America transformed this plant over generations to become corn. It was much smaller than corn is today. We have giant corn today that's grown. But again, this is corn that fed civilizations. So this was like the wheat of the Americas, corn. The Pueblo people in the southwest, they were able to essentially engineer corn that could grow in a desert environment at high altitude. This was one of the most important innovations, scientific engineering innovations in all of world history, because corn then goes from being a tropical plant that's feeding millions of people in Central America to something that can feed millions of people in the Americas. Corn then goes into a tropical plant, goes into the desert. The Pueblo people have harnessed the power of agriculture, and then it goes from the southwest, it goes into the Mississippi culture, where it flourishes, and you have things like the Cahokia civilization in central North America. It goes up the Ohio River to the Iroquois nations, and then all the Algonkin nations in between. So today, the modern American food system is based on corn agriculture. The modern American food system is based on a Native American crop. So Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas farmers are growing an Indian crop to feed hundreds of millions of Americans. And then when you incorporate all the other countries, United States exports corn. Other countries plant corn. There are countries in other parts of the world that are growing corn. Hundreds of millions of people today are fed on a system based on corn. And then corn is just one of the many crops that changed world culture. That's from Native America. Think about this. Before 1492, Europeans had never seen a tomato. Italian food did not have any tomatoes in it because they didn't exist in Europe. Tomatoes are a Native American crop. Tomatoes have revolutionized, like corn, the world food system. Another crop that was developed further down in South America by the Incas were potatoes. And potatoes have come to also revolutionize the world food system. If you're interested, like I said earlier, the first book, if you're new to the subject, is 1491. If you want a really sort of interesting take on the Southwest with the Pueblo civilization and Chaco and Mesa Verde, I recommend History of the Ancient Southwest by Stephen Lekson. And then if you want to sort of dig into the science, I would recommend the Moundbuilders, Ancient Peoples of the Eastern North America by George Milner. But thanks so much for listening. Happy reading, and have a good day. I'll see you next time. Subscribe if you like this, and check us out at jeffreythelibrarian.com.